Good afternoon. We are live to the second Leaders and Revenue Leaders event of Sales Confidence for 2021. Super excited to be here. Absolutely love organizing these events, and I'm really proud that we've got to announce a new partnership with Demodesk. So I'll shortly be introducing Veronica and Lauren in a moment. Before we get started, just to let you know the order of events, when you arrive, please can you just come to the staging area and add your chat and say hello. Let us know where you're signing in from today, and let us know what the weather is where you are, because it's pretty grey where I am in Paddington in a WeWork today. We absolutely love bringing the community together. Still, right now, while so few of us can't get together physically, it's so important that we're coming together once a quarter to enjoy the company of each other and learn from a really world-class lineup of leaders. I'm really excited about the lineup of speakers today. If you haven't been to a sales confidence event before, which is unusual, but it does happen, each of our speakers only gets 7 minutes to deliver insight and actionable value that you can take away into your day jobs. You know, 7 minutes is ultra short. We've already had a conversation backstage that delivering a 7-minute talk is a lot more difficult than 30 minutes, but it's enough to give you some value to take away from today's event. Don't be shy if you're watching this and getting excited to get over on LinkedIn and share the fact that you are watching. That just helps us grow the community and gets more people engaged with the events that we're running. So today, I'm really excited, before we kick off, to give you an introduction to Demodesk. And we've got the CEO of Demodesk, Veronica, and the VP of Sales, Lauren Wright, on, before we get Lauren to share her 7 minutes of wisdom. Veronica, welcome to the Sales Confidence community.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Lauren, welcome back, because this isn't your first time, is it?
No, it's not. This is my second, and I'm hoping to keep my talk to 7 minutes this time. We'll see.
Well, we know you have a lot of value to add, so if it goes slightly over, that's absolutely fine. From an audience perspective, Veronica, just to introduce Demodesk, I'd love to share briefly, what is Demodesk and what is it all about?
Yes, I'd love to do that. No, as I said, thank you so much, James, for the opportunity to work together, and super proud to also officially partner now with Sales Confidence. We are actually especially proud to partner with you, because we think you have built an amazing community of inspiring sales leaders. And we also want to, share the commitment to help sales reps grow, help sales leaders grow, because that's also very much in line with what we do at Demodesk, and in line with the product that we are building. Also telling you a few more words about what Demodesk is. So I'm the founder of Demodesk. We founded the company about 4 years ago, and we really want to help every sales rep to become a top performer. So Demodesk is an online meeting platform built for sales teams that guides sellers in real time, automates non-selling tasks like scheduling and CRM admin, engages customers right in the meeting, and also enables teams to analyze insights at scale. And all of that helps teams accelerate revenue growth, increase sales, cut down ramp time, and basically just get more transparency over their sales process. And I'm very much excited to be part of the community and also listen to the inspiring talks of the sales leaders today.
Amazing. Veronica, thank you. And thank you for your support. We literally wouldn't be able to put these on without the support of our partners. So I'm really excited for Demodesk to be introduced to the audience, but also to the market more widely. There's a lot more that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months. So glad for you to be here. While we've got you, Lauren, and before you do your talk, why did you join Demodesk?
Yeah, good question. I had actually, part of the talk is to share this, so maybe I will actually hit the 7 minutes. But the reason I joined Demodesk is because I spent the last 9 years at an organization scaling very, very quickly, and went from when I joined, it was Glassdoor, and when I joined Glassdoor, we were fewer than 40 people. We were just starting to scale up. We were thinking about the journey from 1 to 10. And then suddenly it was the journey from 20 to 40, and then it was the journey onward, and it kept going. And you can imagine over the 9 years, and we're constantly searching for a tool that would help us speak to customers. And so when I met Veronica and the team at Demodesk, it was like this amazing tool that I needed for the past 9 years that could have helped me scale faster, to ramp reps faster, to accelerate the velocity of the sales, and coach reps, being one sales leader that had reps in many different locations. That was always a struggle for me. So for me, the product, which I really only until I joined Demodesk realized how much horsepower it had, was the reason I joined, beyond just the inspiring people at Demodesk like Veronica.
I love it. Absolutely great to hear. And having seen you in action before, it got me even more excited when I heard that you were joining Demodesk. And clearly, as a cloud-based meeting solution, you've got a lot of ideas of improving the experience for inside and remote sales teams in this new kind of digital remote world. And I think it's just an important piece of technology that needs to be considered. So thank you, Veronica, for that opening gambit. Just so everybody is aware, Veronica is also going to be speaking at our annual conference on the 7th of July. So something that many or may not be aware of, and I'll put the link into the chat. Every year we run an annual conference for the top sales leaders in Europe. Last year we did it remotely. It was virtual, online. We had over 1,500 of the top sales and revenue leaders from around Europe on the event. And this year I'm really excited that both Veronica and Lauren will be speaking. So I'll share some details later on about that, but also the link. But you should just be able to see that SaaS Growth, as it's called, is Europe's #1 B2B sales and revenue marketing leadership conference. We've only just started promoting, but we expect 1,500 to 2,000 people to be attending this year. And we've got a great lineup of speakers and sponsors from across some of the top companies in the industry. So that's enough of the plugs. Thank you to all our partners. Veronica, I want to thank you for contributing and becoming a platinum sponsor. And now we'll say goodbye and let Lauren take the center stage, if that's okay.
Of course. Thank you so much. Excited for this. And yeah, excited for Lawrence and Lawrence talk and also the others.
So let me introduce Lauren before you take to the stage so you can get ready. So prior to Demodesk, in November last year, Lauren previously held roles at Glassdoor, where she joined originally as a senior AE in San Francisco before moving to London and becoming the director of EMEA sales. Glassdoor, as you probably know, has been a huge success story. It's been a huge part of how candidates decide what companies to join. And it's no surprise her criteria that she used in joining Demodesk. She's got a background in finance, and she's also a member of the Revenue Collective, which I know many of us are. Lauren, thank you for your time, and excited for you to share your views on automation and AI and your perspective on building high-performing sales teams.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for the warm introduction. And it's great to be here on the stage again. You run some really impressive events, especially taking us all through the pandemic. So today I want to talk about the role of automation and AI in sales. Has changed so much. Even over the last, we talked about like my 9-year journey previously through a scale up, and there's so much that changed during that period. It's such a hot topic. And I think it's kind of at the intersection of sort of the great debate of, whether sales is an art or a science. And it certainly, we see with automation and AI in sales, we're seeing sales index more and more towards being a science. And if you look at, every person in your organization, we use data every single day. Whether you're in sales development or an AE or an account manager, or leader, or marketing person, and beyond that, a customer success, we have to use data every day in our role and have a scientific process, or we will not be successful. And so I think data and automation are playing such an important role in us being able to scale and able to scale quickly. and the science of sales is, just critical to success of any organization. But that doesn't mean that the art of being a great sales rep is gone. It does mean, however, that I think without data and automation piece, that the art could be gone. So I think one is actually contingent on the other. And what do I mean by that? I mean, so if we all want to hire A players in our organization, and we've probably created some sort of hiring loop or hiring criteria rubric to measure what an A player really is. And you probably have some quantitative metrics that you use, and also a quadrant that's built out for sort of the art. And what I mean by the art is sort of that ineffable charisma you need from a salesperson, sort of the creativity, the passion, sales spirit, the grit that that person has, that that unique charisma that makes waves in the world around them and makes everyone on the team better. And that's the dream sales artist. So when I think about why do we continue to see sort of instances where companies hire what seemingly is a great rep and hits that ineffable quadrant that I'm talking about, of that sort of grit, that charisma, and has all the things like the creative mindset and the founder's mindset, why can't they produce? Why does it take so long to get somebody ramped into an organization when they've hit President's Club and crushed their number and have that sales spirit? Why doesn't it work? And why does it take so long to ramp? And if you look at how much time reps spend in a world where we're asking them to collect a lot of data, because we need the data to make decisions about the organization, but we end up asking our really good sales reps, who we hired, by the way, because they're really good at selling, not at collecting data. We ask them to spend a lot of time on non-selling activities. So we have instances where reps are actually spending 60% of their time, or gasp, more than that, on non-selling tasks, and you're actually kind of killing them slowly. You're taking away their sort of paintbrush, using the artist metaphor, and sending them to the stock room to restock the paints. We're actually kind of demoralizing our reps, and it's not only is it really bad for them, but it's also wasting a lot of money we invested in the reps, but it's wasting a lot of money for our own organization. So we have to find ways to automate non-selling tasks and give reps, while collecting that data that we desperately need, we'll give reps what is critical to their success. And I'll use an example. In a previous role, I rolled out a sales process, which I thought was like great. And it had really clear criteria about how to move a deal from stage to stage, incredible exit criteria that was very explicit. And that's what you need, right? To scale, you need these very clear process. But in that process, I had a rep, once we rolled it out, that started using it day to day and walked up to me and said, "Hey, Lauren, I'm spending all of my time below the line." And I said, "What do you mean below the line? What does that mean?" And he said, well, he spends all this time focused on trying to fill out the 4 easy steps, or I said easy steps, and 3 sub-steps to the sales process in Salesforce that was actually making him spend an enormous amount of time after a call with a customer on what he called below the line activity. And reading into that a little bit further, I was actually taking away what made him really happy, which was getting on the phone with customers and energizing him, and the reason for which I hired him. So I think, after I did the math, every single time a sales rep had enter notes into Salesforce, I was actually losing a ton of money. And not like even counting sort of the sales zen that I was losing by like killing the happiness of every single rep, by ruining that great moment that they had with a customer meeting, by making them enter an enormous amount of data in Salesforce. So I think whatever process you're creating, the first takeaway there is do it yourself. Put yourself into the sales rep shoes and move a deal all the way through the funnel. Create a quote. Understand how painful it is to create a quote. If it's not painful, figure out ways to automate. Figure out ways to automate the non-selling tasks in your process. And that was one of the first things at Demodesk, and luckily the tool does it very well. But when our sales reps actually run a call, they take notes during the meeting, and then after the meeting's done, everything syncs back to Salesforce, not even just notes, but actually back to fields that they need to fill out in Salesforce, and it's done and dusted. So when it's finished, it's the end of the story. So that's just one area where I think automation is playing a more and more important role in taking away these activities of data collection and non-selling activities that frankly reps just aren't hired to do. I think there are a few, like when we're talking about AI and automation, I think there are a few sort of myths that are out there. And one, and I'm sure like most people in the audience maybe don't see these myths, but I'll walk through them anyway. But one would be that AI is like the future, and it's not here today, and it's really complex, and it's only super machines or supercomputers and self-driving cars, and that's just not true. AI is really important today, and if it's not part of your business, I don't think your business will be successful. So AI is simply identifying patterns that are based on a large set of data and using those patterns to make predictions. So it can be very simple as looking at the average talk time during meetings. That's something that we look at, like at the end of each week, the average talk time during meetings. And that can also mean predicting. There are tools out there that help you predict the language that you should write in an email, depending on the persona of the person that you're talking to. Should you use a trust word instead of a power word? Things like that can really change the outcome of a conversation. And there are other things like intent data and lead scoring and figuring out who should be in your pipeline. And then once they are in your pipeline, predicting whether or not they will close. So it can really enable you to better forecast and optimize results. So here today, AI is here today, and you have to use it at every stage of the sales process. And that brings me to myth number 2, which is automation is really just a top of the funnel activity. So it's with the advent, I think, of engagement tools that came on the scene and changed the way we think about prospecting from maybe making myself sound pretty old here, but email blasts and mail merges back in the day. But now we talk about sequences and cadences and omnichannel and nurture paths and all that. But you're really missing a step, though, if that's your automation stops at top of the funnel. You really need to think about how you can automate playbooks and sales playbooks and collateral and ensure that everybody has a common language and is using common language, and automating that so it's easy for reps to do that and deploy that in their meetings using scheduling tools and meeting reminders and follow-up and CRM integrations that I recently mentioned. But all of those things are so important to you being successful. And then finally, myth number 3, which is AI and automation will somehow replace people. And that's also goes back to the opening topic that I mentioned about the art and science of sales. And sales will always be art and science. And AI and automation they'll make us smarter. They'll accelerate our careers. So if you're thinking about developing your people, if you're not giving them tools to automate, then they're not going to develop quickly. They're going to spend a lot of time doing tasks that don't help them, build their mind and be creative and do all the things that you need them to do to move to the next level. So inspire and engage people are a crucial investment. So your ability to accelerate revenue depends on how much you invest in AI and in automation.
Lauren, thank you. How do you feel?
I think I went over the time limit a little bit, so I'm sorry about that.
But we love you. Thank you for sharing your insights, and thank you for the expertise that you're sharing around AI and also the future of building high-performance teams. I'll let you drop off and we'll get you back on the panel. For those of you that have got questions, feel free to engage with Lauren in the channel, and then we'll have her back on at the panel. So next up, I'm really excited. There are some speakers that have taken me a long time to get onto this stage. Often if you're wondering how we get recommendations for speakers, other speakers recommend speakers. And then I assess based on market intel and what I hear about on back channels if individuals are going to be excellent. And today I'm really happy to have Cassi, because Cassi is the Vice President of Worldwide Sales at a company called Redgate Software based out in Cambridge. In 2018, she received the Sales Director of the Year Award at the British Excellence in Sales Management Awards. She's worked in software sales for over 15 years and has experienced across all aspects of the sales process, with a focus on team leadership and account-based sales approach. She particularly enjoys building sales teams in new territories and bringing various stakeholders across the company together to collaborate. She's going to be sharing how she's evolved her career over many years at the same company and focused on an account-based selling strategy. So Cassi, slides are on. You all good?
Yeah, thank you very much, James.
Excellent.
Great intro for me, no pressure.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much. It has been a long time coming, and James, you did manage to finally pin me down. So in the next 7 minutes, I'm going to be talking about how to grow with an account-based sales strategy. But what I'm really going to be talking about is how at Redgate we went from product-led growth into a sales motion. My role at Redgate is the Global VP of Sales, so I manage the entire sales function. That's across many different offices globally. I report into the CEO and sit on the exec team as well. I've been at Redgate for 15 years, and I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a second. I'm not going to talk too much about what Redgate do. Many of you probably haven't heard of us, and that's because our end users are technical end users. So we sell database tooling. I'll tell you the key bits of information that are useful for you to know so that you understand the context behind what I'm going to be talking about. The first is that our brand is incredibly strong. So anybody that's been using a database tool on any platform will have heard of Redgate software at some point. That figure of 200,000 customers is probably way more than that. We've got a huge amount of people that know us globally. The other bit of information that's useful to know is that we offer most of our software on perpetual licensing, so we're still moving over to subscription. So we have a mixture of both subscription-based products and perpetual. But what that means is that we look at things still in annual bookings. And finally, we're privately owned. So that comes with good and bad, but what it means is that in our 22-year history, we've always been profitable. So this is my timeline at Redgate. I've been there for 15 years, somewhat of a lifer at the moment. But what I want to talk about today is a specific point in my career, which was in 2015, when I took a bit of a risk and started a new role as head of strategic accounts. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about what strategy I put together there in order to pivot into a sales motion for Redgate. So our starting point at Redgate, this is a really useful book. I'd recommend it to anybody, but with any strategy we roll out, we look at the core principles that Richard Rummel talks about in his Good Strategy, Bad Strategy book. That means you start with a very clear diagnosis, have a very clear guiding policy, and then a list of coherent actions, which we call key results. So in 2015, what was our diagnosis back then? So we had product-led growth since we started, and that had flatlined over the past 5 years. So since 2000, we just hadn't been growing revenue. And when we looked at that from a sales perspective, our diagnosis was there's not enough leads coming in from downloads and white papers. Our conversion rates are already incredibly strong. We're doing an exceptional job of making sure that we're contacting them quickly. Everything's working as we would expect, but there just wasn't enough of them. And we had to explore other lead sources to hit our revenue targets. It was predominantly inbound driven at that point. So those downloads were coming in, and most of our growth was going to come from existing accounts. So at that point, I said, okay, part of this new role that I'm taking, I'm going to take 50 accounts. Now, the average spend of our accounts in our system was I think about $1,000 per account in a given year. Remember, this is perpetual. So I took 50 accounts, and at the end of that year, made $2 million. So every single customer that I contacted of those 50 renewed. So I made $500,000 from that. The rest of them spent $1.5 million in new license sales. And this was the turning point, because our CEO said, look, what we've done is we've fired a bullet here, and now we need to fire a cannon. This is a strategy that's that's going to work. And so that was a really big thing, because he then jumped on this idea and stood in front of the entire company and said, look, we're going to make Redgate as successful with large companies as we are with small ones. What that meant is that product then started building our products in line with that buyer group. Marketing started pivoting their marketing strategy, and that was a big turning point for us. So what did that look like with regards to the sales org? In 2015, I just had one other person that I was sort of going after those 50 accounts with. In year 2, I brought on another 3 salespeople. I think we managed to do just under $8 million. So we could see it working repeatedly. And step forward to 2021, we've got 120 people across 5 different locations. So this is just a subsection of that model with account executives, BDRs, SDRs. We also have obviously a sales ops function and sales enablement function. So we've scaled quite rapidly. I mean, we are also at the same time looking to push that number up to about 200 in the next year. With regards to company revenue, we had flatlined at that 40 million number in 2020. We've been moving products onto subscription, which obviously it affects our annual bookings, but also we had the pandemic. I think we would have been looking to do about 85 million in 2020 had things been different, but this year we'll definitely be looking at that 85 to $90 million number. And how did we do it? There's 3 really key things when it comes to scaling that I think were the most important for us. The first is cultural alignment. So whenever we went into new territories or started a new office, it was really important that we had cultural alignment. That meant that quite often we would second people from the UK or transfer them over to start those new offices, not necessarily in leadership roles, but in a variety of different roles. Building a strong team, I'm really pleased to say that the original team that I started with in 2016 is still in the company today, helping us embed the process and policy that we came up with together in the early days. And then finally, training and development. There's nothing harder when you're scaling than to see your turnover rates increasing. And I really didn't want that to happen. And we've actively invested in training and development across the sales organization, which brings me on to my final slide. In 2015, we had a sales org where we just had a renewals function and an inside sales function. 2021, we've got a range of different career paths, ranging from inside sales all the way up to global accounts. Because of that training and development that we offer and the investment that we've made there, I'm really pleased that all of the global account executives who are now doing 7-figure deals regularly started in inside sales roles, and we've trained them up in a very, very quick time period. So finally, what's up next? We've opened, I went over and opened our Brisbane office, I think about 2 years ago, and then Berlin we opened in the last 12 months. We're going to be scaling both of those. Since we've opened them, we've doubled our revenue growth very quickly with a very, very small team. So we're quite excited to be scaling those up, and we'll be continuing our investment into the EMEA and US region. That's it from me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for joining us, Cassi, and thanks for telling us a journey. I actually feel like versus, and I'm sure many of the sales leaders on this call can relate, that's quite a tenure to be a tech company these days, especially as a sales leader. So it's clearly a testament to the success that you've had year on year. And it'd be very interesting at whatever point that becomes where you decide to shift to in the future. And it's also interesting getting that perspective versus some of the typical VC or private equity backed companies that many of the sales leaders work in. So I'm imagining that you're going to have a lot of questions around the account-based sales strategy come to you via LinkedIn, and we can discuss that more in the panel later. So thank you, Cassi.
Excellent. Thank you, James.
Awesome. So next up, really excited to have Rosie Cochran, who is the VP of Sales of the UK and Nordics at Datasite, talking about the importance of mindset and the competition, like the competitive environment that you create within your sales organization. So Rosie, let's bring you up to the screen and I'll make the introduction. So Rosie joined Datasite as an AE in New York in 2015 and then moved to London in 2019 to be the VP of Sales for the UK and Nordics. And she's got also a background in development of charitable organizations and a sense of giving back to her community. She's also got a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service International Business Development from Georgetown University. I'm really glad. If you noticed today, actually, we've got a number of women leaders outnumbering the men, which is a really good sign and a testament to the great world-class leaders we've got out there. So, Rosie, really looking forward to you taking up the mantle. Thanks for joining us, and good luck with your talk.
Thank you, James. And, thank you, Sales Confidence, and James, for having me here today. It's so valuable to hear from other leaders and learn from them, especially female leaders that are, like-minded professionals that have been so successful in their careers. So what I really want to do today is, give anyone that's interested some actionable items that, or maybe you could call it recommendations that can immediately be implemented into your everyday work. And I believe that it will very quickly make some short-term and then some long-term positive change. So, there's so many books out there and talks about how to manage and how to sell and how to generate revenue. And when I was put into a leadership position a few years back, you kind of think to yourself, where do I start? And how do I do this, right? Because a lot of times strong sellers move into management, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a strong manager. So I think that the best thing to do is really just simplify it, focus on one or two things for the most impact. And today, I don't plan on telling you what I do in my day-to-day, because I think that will bore you to tears. And I also believe, in all honesty, that there's a lot of different methodologies and styles out there that work to get you to that same end result. The sales 101 basics will really always be the foundation, the core, and you don't need to tell me you don't need me to tell you what those are. So I think the best use of my time and the best use of everyone's time here is to share one of the key tenets that will always be relevant. So as the times are changing in different environments, as we've switched from in person to virtual and back, with different generations that are coming into the workforce today. So I think as we have it, so this can be applied in sales and in life and in sports, wherever it is that you want to apply it. I assume that everyone on this call is looking to apply it to sales. So I'll start with, as a sales leader, if you can focus on or channel what it is I'm about to discuss, I think that you will really see your team grow as sellers and individuals. So first and most important thing is the mindset. So how do we put enough focus on both our own and our sellers' mental ability? Wellness is such a hot topic these days, but I think we really need to understand what it means and the importance of it and how it's going to be connected to our success. And then second piece of that is really just the healthy competition. How do we use that? It's obviously very mental competition when it comes to the workforce, and how do we not abuse it? So first and foremost, the mindset. I just want to start by drawing the obvious connection here to our physical ability. So anyone that you would talk to has a pretty good grasp on physical ability, physical fitness, physical training. If you want to run a marathon, you're going to need to train for 6+ months and run several hours each week. And I'm not sure that there's anyone out there that really would disagree with that. It's just factual, it's science, and to be able to achieve a physical goal, you need to train for that goal and push yourself out of your comfort zone. And the comfort zone is what varies from person to person. And that's the piece I want everyone to remember. So, we understand what the physical ability is, but do we understand the mental ability, right? Because we're managing a team, not to be physically fit, but to be mentally fit. And how do we measure it? And how do we recognize it when we're recruiting, which is obviously very, very crucial? How do we train it? These are the type of questions that we as leaders should be asking ourselves every single day. Because ultimately, I think that we can train them in sales skills. We can give them the tactics to be successful. I do believe that. I think we can also help our sellers learn our products. But can you teach them to train their mind? Can you coach them to train their mind? And how do you encourage the mindfulness practice? So the best way to start this and start incorporating it into your management style is with a few basic questions. So do you understand what motivates your sellers? Do you understand their intentions? Can you tell when their work is affected? When they are not mentally there. So I think this is the kind of stuff that, is obviously a $1 million question, is how do we help our sellers at the end of the day? So my takeaway for today is for every sales manager out there to sit down with your sales team and sit down first, I guess, by yourself and look back for trends and look for patterns of how your sellers have reacted in certain situations. When they lose a deal, do they recover right away? And do they learn from it? Or do they have that whole week where it kind of affects them? And then sit down with the sellers and understand what their motivations are, and both personally and professionally, why are they doing this job? Yes, they need a job, but why this job? Why this company? What's driving them? What's exciting them? I think that if you need to ask the question, it does not mean that you're a bad manager. I actually think the opposite. If you don't ask the question and you don't understand, you're not really doing your job right. So this then, and kind of the moral of all of this is, once you understand that, it allows you to push them out of that comfort zone. And it's not your comfort zone. It's not the collective team's comfort zone. It's theirs. And this is how you're going to get the most out of them. I recently, my boss gave me a book called The Mindful Athlete. And what they say in it, there's a line that says, mindfulness practice is like watering your garden. It's the only way to make it grow. So once you have that understanding, the next challenge is to then implement that healthy competition that I mentioned earlier. And I think the way that it's most commonly used today, it's going to be on a monthly basis. A manager says, okay, who is going to have the most activity, or who is going to hit their revenue target? And of course, that can be effective, but not if you're overusing it and you're using the same competition every single time. If you think about, if you're running that competition, there's the same 3 sellers that are winning every single month. What happens to the other 7 sellers? So I'll need to wrap this up soon, but my recommendation to anyone on the call is to start creating that competition with the individual themselves, because now that you have the understanding of their comfort zone, you can challenge them to go outside of it, and that's what's going to lead to the higher performance. So it may be a different challenge for every individual on your team that makes them tick and which really pushes them, but that's the beauty of understanding it. And I think that's what really makes a strong manager, is being able to adapt and shift according to who you're managing. And I'll just leave you with, if you're able to find that right balance, quality, and intensity, that's where you're going to have the most success at the end of the day. Awesome.
Thank you, Rosie. And thank you for adjusting. It improved remarkably for me on the audio. There's definitely, I think that leads nicely into our next speaker, Chris Hatfield, especially around mindset, mindfulness, and also the well-being of your team, and also thinking about the competition and the approach that you apply to a high-performing team. So thank you for joining us, and we'll have you back on the panel at the end. Speak to you soon. Chris Hatfield,
James,
how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. It's exciting to see your face more regularly online now. Many should recognize you as the founder and coach at Sales Psyche. You've gained, one of the things I would just like to highlight in terms of the mission at Sales Confidence, our mission is to help people with their mindset, their well-being and performance. And I put mindset and well-being ahead of everything. And so it's been great that Chris decided to partner with Sales Confidence. You're going to be talking about recognizing and managing burnout, especially how to spot it across your sales team, which I think is even more prevalent now. Chris is the founder and coach of Sales Psyche. He's also a podcast. He's also got his own podcast. He's worked with various companies like Google and Facebook, and is passionate about mental well-being, particularly amongst the sales community. And I think that's what's so special about your approach. And you created Sales Psyche to support and develop healthier minds and sales pipelines and build vibrant cultures. And I know many in the community's leaders can reference you of already making positive change in their organization. So congratulations for that, Chris. I'm really looking for you to be the final speaker today.
Yeah, thanks, James. And just checking, you can see my screen, can't you?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. Good. So yeah, afternoon, everyone. Just gonna get my talk in 7 minutes, and really enjoyed the session so far. So as James mentioned, what I'm going to be talking about today is understanding and managing burnout. And I think it's so important, more now than ever, really, in a more remote climate, to understand exactly what this is and how we can go about managing it and preventing it to the best of our abilities. I mean, if you look at some of the stats, an Uncrushed survey said that 2 out of 3 sales reps were close to or experiencing burnout, and workplace stress is now the 5th biggest killer in the world. So there's some really big sort of numbers behind this. So just to give you some context, and obviously this topic, I could speak all day about it. And if you catch me in the networking afterwards, feel free to ask me more about it. But burnout, if you imagine it like everyone's got their container, and this container is our stress container. When stress keeps coming in and gets to a top and fills over, that's where burnout occurs. Everyone has a different size container, and there's different ways to relieve some of that pressure. But stress is our body's way of responding in a positive sense to a situation. It's actually helping us, it's serving us in that situation. And the perception of stress can have an impact of how we respond to it. Some of you listening to this might have a negative perception of stress, which means when it happens, that stressful event can spill over and cause you to have a stressful day, a stressful week. Some of you thinking, do you know what, I thrive off of stress. That can be good, but if you're putting your body in a stressful state constantly, it's like sticking a car in 5th gear, you're going to burn out eventually from it. And what happens is burnout occurs when, like I said, it sort of reaches this spillover point of this bucket of this container and spills over. This can be caused, there's a number of things, but I've picked out some things that maybe aren't always talked about here, by an excessive drive or ambition. I'm not saying anyone shouldn't be ambitious or driven, but I use the example, if you've ever been on a run or a gym session, you finished it, you feel amazing. The old adage is, you never regret a workout. But if you tried to do that all over again, your body would fail on you at some point. And that's why it's really important, particularly in sales, when we've had a good day, a good week, a good month, a good quarter, to just think about and ask your teams, is what you've done sustainable? You might need to obviously put the hard hours in and work weekends, but is that sustainable over the next 3 to 6 months? Is what you've done, and are you taking those pit stops along the way to recharge yourself? Another thing that's important here is neglecting non-work identities. This is what often leads to burnout as well. And what I mean by this is people getting overly infatuated with their job title, with their number, and forgetting who they are outside of work: a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, a volunteer, a coach, a father, a mother, whatever it might be. And all of those things obviously make them great at what they do, and has probably got them that role in the first place. The problem is when you put all your emphasis on one thing, your job, this arbitrary number, and you're struggling, is all your self-worth and self-belief is in that number and in that job title. And when it's not going well, it's hard to have some perspective around it. So it's really important to encourage people to kind of, when you're sitting down with them in one-to-ones, is to be having that conversation of who they are outside of work, what value they're bringing. It's easy, obviously, in sales because we've got a number, we can measure that, but it's helping people reflect outside of work of the value they're bringing to people around them as well. I wanted to just touch on as well some of the things to spot that are difference between stressed and burnt out. So when people are stressed in your team, you'll often see over-engagement. You'll see people wanting to do more and more, even when, for example, maybe they aren't hitting their target, maybe when their plate is completely full, but they're stressed, so they're constantly wanting to help. Burnout is characterized by disengagement. So this is where someone is maybe not involved as much on the Zoom calls or in Slack, or isn't coming up with ideas as much before. Stress, emotions are quite overreactive, so people can, be quite short-tempered and respond to things, become quite overwhelmed. Burnout, emotions are often quite blunted. So this might seem like someone's lost engagement or isn't motivated or, isn't focused anymore. And in fact, they might just be burnt out when you're having a conversation with them and maybe you're delivering some feedback, some constructive feedback, and they just don't seem like they're taking it in. This could be where they just feel like quite numb to it because they're burnt out. And the final thing here is stress produces that kind of urgency and that hyperactivity versus burnout, which produces more of a helplessness and hopelessness, this kind of feeling of, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. Where I am right now, I'm stuck like this forever. So what are some of the things that you can do to manage and prevent this? Well, I've got 5 things. There's probably 20 things I could have talked about, but I want to keep it concise. The first thing is to encourage people. It's always good to obviously, want your team to come and speak to you, and I'm sure a lot of you have those great relationships where they do. But what's also useful is to encourage people to get what I call a mental health buddy. We get asked on a numerous time each day of how are you doing, how are you? And it's quite a superficial question. It gets a superficial response because we become quite defensive sometimes. But if we can give people permission, if your team can give someone permission, someone else in the team, to say, look, Chris, if you see me on a Zoom call today and I'm not myself, or over the next few days, or I'm a bit quieter on Slack, you've got permission to check in with me and see how I'm doing. By doing that, by initiating that, your team are less likely to become defensive when asked about it. And what it does, it gets them to start talking more about how they're feeling, their mental health, their well-being, and avoids this being bottled up to a point where burnout occurs or some other things happen from it. The next thing is recovery plans. So it's great saying, you know, have an afternoon off, have a day off, have a week off if people are struggling, if people are burnt out. But it's important when they've had that rest time, when they come back, to think, what are we going to do differently? Not just them, but you as a leader. What are we going to do differently this time to avoid that happening again, rather than it happening in 2 months again and needing another week off? You've got to be thinking differently when someone comes back and sitting down and going, right, this is what I'm going to do to support you. And this is what are you going to do as well to avoid us getting back to this situation? Rest is important, but it's, you know, insanity is, you know, doing the same thing over and over again. And sometimes that's what can happen. The third thing here is to lead by example. People will often do what you do, not what you say. So if you're telling people to switch off at weekends and in the evenings, don't be sending Slacks or emails on the evenings or weekends. Cue it for Monday, unless it's super urgent, which call them. But quite often it's not. When you're going on holiday, be clear why you're going on holiday. Tell them, you know what, I need to recharge. Be okay with starting that conversation that you want other people to be having in the team. Tell people you're going to switch off. Don't be emailing back and forward on holiday. Again, there might be people in your team that want to become a manager, that want to become a leader. They see that behavior and they instantly think, I need to follow suit. The fourth one is change the conversation around how you check in with people. So again, some simple ones here. Rather than just asking how you're doing, you could ask it twice. What it shows is it's not just a pleasantry. It shows you're genuinely interested in them. You can ask a scaling question. How are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 today? They give you a low number. Okay, what's the reason behind that? They give you a high number. What's the reason behind that? It expands the conversation. It changes the conversation. It's a pattern interrupt for them as well. And then finally, creating clear expectations and support avenues for new starters. So it's great when people join the company, you're telling them what they can earn, the vision of the company, where you can get to. But if you're not telling them all the things they're going to experience of maybe after 2 or 3 weeks or a month, or when people say no to them when a deal falls through, and you're not telling them that, when they feel it, they're going to feel like, well, no one else has talked to me about this, so maybe I'm the odd one out. Maybe I'm not right for this business. Talking about these things proactively means when they come up, people feel more comfortable coming to you and talking to you about it because you've preempted it. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. If anyone's got any more questions about this, obviously you can ask in the panel, and I'll be in the conversation afterwards as well. But I really enjoyed coming on again. Thanks, James, for having me. And back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Such an important topic and incredibly well laid out. So thank you for sharing. I think there's some incredible takeaways there. But I highly recommend people get in touch with Chris directly for more. So let's invite all the speakers back. And so this is an opportunity in the chat. If you just want to ask some questions now, let's just open up the question area. I'm going to invite all the speakers up. Then once we finish the panel in 10 or so minutes, we invite everybody to go into the networking. Obviously, networking right now is very, very difficult in person. I would take advantage of these incredible speakers and pull over into the networking after this session. So Chris, Lauren, Cassi, Rosie, thanks very much. You've done your 7-minute talk. Round of applause. Now, so the first question was related to Lauren talking about a lot of tasks that salespeople end up doing that end up taking a lot of time. I just wondered, in your sales organization, what sales tasks do your salespeople moan about the most? Or what do they generally moan about in the organizations that you've come across?
We are, we talk to sales leaders often. So some of the things that we hear about most are really just meetings that that happen, and then after the meeting, you need to update notes in whatever CRM you're using, whether it's HubSpot or Pipedrive or Salesforce, and then underlying that is all of the other pick list, whatever you have in Salesforce, that particular opportunity objects, let's say, that you need to fill out in order to move the deal to the next stage. And I think those are important data points to collect. The challenge is that collecting them can be pretty difficult if you're not set up properly.
Thank you for sharing. Any other points?
I'd say prospecting. I mean, we've just bought SalesLoft and it's sped things up massively. It's been really, really helpful. The reps, that's been 6 to 12 months of me hearing about how painful it is doing all that manually, and now Sales Loft has just fixed that. So that's gone down really well. That we've just bought Prolific for account planning, and that also has taken a lot off their plates when it comes to kind of doing a lot of manual work. The thing I haven't quite pinned down yet is how I can get feedback back to the development team. Like, we're using Slack, but it's just quite meaty, and I need to figure out how we can remove some of the admin, because that's obviously really important for the developers to be hearing from customers directly, and that comes through the sales team. And that's the piece at the moment that I think they're struggling with the most, because I need to capture that information, but also it needs to get back to the developers in a structured way. So that's the bit I haven't quite mastered yet. I can't quite get my head around how we're going to do that successfully. So there's still a bit of admin involved there.
Yeah, thank you for those tidbits. Anything else to add, Rosie or Chris?
I think from my perspective, it's just kind of understanding what are they just complaining about.
Speak up, Rosie. Sorry, you're going to have to get closer to that mic.
That's okay, sorry. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just really determining what is a legitimate complaint and when are they just complaining to complain. That piece of it is, and I think Lauren actually spoke to this. It's when you run through the process yourself and you feel that it's painful from your perspective, that's when you can really then make a change. But there's some things that is just part of sales that need to be done. So I think I really like Lauren's point of, do it yourself. And if you feel that creating the quote or generating the opportunity is a true headache, then okay, it's time to make some change. So that's valid. Thank you for sharing. I wanted to ask around this mindset piece in your organizations. So both Rosie and everybody's touched on kind of the performance of their sales team, but both Rosie and Chris touched on, mindset and the importance of maybe mindfulness. Has there anything that, particularly over the time of the pandemic, that you've introduced into your sales org, or you've seen work effectively from an approach that you've created opportunities for your salespeople to think about their well-being? Are you just giving them extra time? I've heard some companies giving a couple of days off a month extra. Some have brought in other organizations. Is there anything that you've done differently over the last 6 to 12 months that you've seen is added an advantage around mindset and well-being? Yeah, I think one thing that's worked well is just kind of blocking out the hours where they're not allowed to have internal Zoom meetings, because it can just be so consuming and draining to be on these calls 24/7. So same with your seller, establish that time where you're not going to be on those calls, that you're going to have that time to yourself to actually work in the background on your initiatives, on your strategy, and just making sure they really block it out and stay true to it.
I love that idea. That's great. To commit people to have no internal Zoom meetings around certain windows. So simple to do, but requires a company-wide commitment. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. Lauren?
Yeah, I've done the no meeting Wednesdays before too, and it was really a great thing. Hard to do, but a great thing. I mean, one thing, just back like on sort of on the automation topic, but on mindfulness, using automation to kind of help you with mindfulness is I can see a report at the end of the week that shows how many meetings my reps had externally and internally. So it tells me, like, am I inundating my reps with internal meetings? And, is there a way for me to sort of remove all this sort of internal meeting activity from my reps so that they can focus and get on with their day without having sort of the fatigue of always being online? I mean, the other thing we've done is actually had an outside someone like Chris come into your organization and just really share productivity tips, how to be mindful of yourself, and do things to, like, everything from eating well to sleeping well, and just reminders of all the things that you need to do to be productive during the day. And that, I think, has really helped people. And we had separate sessions for managers and as well as everyone else in the organization. So I think that is a really great investment to make in your people.
Awesome.
Just to add, James, I had, not from my own personal perspective, but I had Dan Wardle on from Vidyard, who's CRO on the pod, and he was talking about asynchronous video has been something that has really helped them cut down on internal meetings, because they're now doing short videos beforehand summarizing what to expect from the meeting. That's either meaning the meeting doesn't need to go ahead at all, or it's at least giving people sometimes in that meeting, more of the reflectors, a chance to think about their ideas and ensure when they come to that meeting, it's not just wasted time and filled, it can be a lot shorter from it.
That's great. And in my kind of day job now with Drift, we do exactly the same. It just means that not everybody is required outside of different time zones, especially internationally, to be on the same Zoom call. So that's actually a really good snippet. Thanks for sharing. Cassi, anything else to add?
I mean, we do no meeting Fridays. It means that all of my emails come through on a Friday. I at least, like, everybody is in the same boat. So the whole sales function has no meeting Fridays, and that's freed up a lot of time. I mean, we go the extra mile for sort of mental health awareness week. I mean, a lot of the teams at the moment are doing photography workshops online, and we have stuff scheduled every single day for different initiatives, and I push them to do that. And I also push them to make sure they're taking time off. That's the thing that's really important. But yeah, as I say, we go the extra mile as a company. I don't need to push it from a sales perspective, because the company has a whole board of people that are kind of looking after this side of things and enforcing it down across the entire company. So we invest quite heavily in it to make sure.
Great. Well, we're just coming up on time. As speakers, is there a question you want to pose to each other? Has someone got a question for the peer set that we brought together? Let me know, and if not, don't be shy.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, I put you on the spot. It's a bit unfair.
Yeah. I mean, someone asked a question in the overall sort of stage about what sales they asked me about, just sales tools I'm using for automation. I'm curious what other tools people are using for automation as well. I mean, Cassi touched on it as the SalesLoft, which is great. And I know SalesLoft is a sponsor here too, but I'd love to hear other tools.
Rosie?
I'm in the same boat here, SalesLoft.
Oh, that wasn't, by the way, just a caveat, that wasn't planned. But that's,
no, it was definitely. I mean, to be fair, I don't use SalesLoft, so I use Outreach, but there you go. But yeah, I mean, outside of engagement tools, I think any other interesting. I mean, for like one of the things that I've seen over the years is really interesting is Crystal Knows, which is an interesting one for just understanding personalities. And I think that has made the small things, but makes a big difference in how your reps, maybe in an emotional moment, especially when you're negotiating a contract and you might be, writing a fierce email, like it helps you kind of tone it down and use the right posture.
Love that. Well, let's use that as the final comment from a speaker. I just want to highlight that the next 30 minutes is all about networking on the side. So you should see two hands like this on the right hand side or the left hand side. I'm not sure where it is. It's not easy. Some of these speakers, it's probably taken me 18 months to get Cassi to speak. So do use this opportunity to network. If you're not so brave to ask a question publicly, definitely do behind the scenes and make sure you connect with everybody on LinkedIn. I'm really grateful for everybody that's joined us today, especially our speakers. And also thank you for our partners, SalesLoft, Fenetrix, MindTickle, Aircall, Varicent, and now Demodesk, as well as Cognizant, Air Marketing, Refract, SalesWorks, and also Sales Psyche. It's been a wonderful afternoon. Looking forward to bringing these back in person, hopefully when it's safe to do so in September. We are looking to go back to the Andes Hotel in London for those that aren't aware. But thank you, speakers, and I'll now ask everybody to head over to the networking.